we will be discussing a section called externalities and public goods. Now, this topic comes under both microeconomics and public finance. So those who are taking public finance or microeconomics may find this useful. So we will be discussing what are externalities, and for this, externalities are the costs or benefits of a transaction which are not reflected in prices or which are not reflected in the demand and supply. So let me share the PowerPoint. So we will be discussing externalities, and externalities is an area which comes under both microeconomics and public. So externalities are actually the costs or benefits of a transaction which are not reflected in prices. In a transaction, in any economic transaction, there will be two transacting parties. Seller and the buyer. So the costs or benefits of a transaction by the producer, the benefit will accrue to the buyers pay the price for it, sellers get the revenue. So in a transaction, the transacting parties get the costs or benefits of a transaction. But the costs or spill over to parties not involved in the transaction. Then you can say that externalities are present. So if a factory is producing a commodity and factory emits pollution so that air gets polluted, then the society, but the factory owner does not take into account this cost when he's producing the commodity. So these kind of costs or benefits of a transaction which are not reflected in prices are called externalities. They are also called third-party effects or spillover effects. That is, it is a third party who bears the brunt of the transaction. When there is a social cost, when there is a social benefit related to a transaction which is not reflected in prices, then that comes under third-party effects or spillover effects. With the presence of externalities, that they cause market failures. For markets to function, price should be equal to cost. But when externalities are present, there will be a marginal social cost or marginal, and because of this, when the marginal cost of the transaction, the marginal cost will not be equal to price, and this is why externalities of externalities. There can be positive externality and negative externality. That's a rather broad classification, dividing externalities into positive and negative externality. You can also see producer-consumer externality, consumer-consumer both in externality. So when you are at a factory is producing a commodity and factory dumps its waste in a river, the river water gets contaminated, and society which uses this river water gets the cost or benefit cost of this transaction. But this cost is not taken into account by the factory. The owner will calculate cost of employing labor, what is the cost of infrastructure, what is the cost of raw materials, but he will never take into account the cost incurred by the society. So that is, externality is a problem which is not reflected in the prices, which is not shown in the demand and supply of a transaction. In the case of producer and consumer itself, there is, suppose there is a good factory nearby your house, then there will be good roads. The producer will ensure uninterrupted power supply. So these are positive externalities. The producer did not do this for your use. He did it for his own purpose to maximize his production, cause a positive external benefit. Then when you consider consumer and consumer externalities, suppose somebody is in a crowded room. The smoker is smoking for his own benefit, but an irritation, it is causing a suffocation for those nearby, then that is a negative consumerality. And suppose somebody is taking music lessons near your house. The teacher is teaching this to teacher is teaching the student music lessons, but they are playing beautiful music. You can listen to the music and enjoy music. Then that is positive externality in the case of consumer externalities. So externalities can be of different and it can be broadly classified into positive externality and negative externality. Positive externality, the marginal external benefit will be higher than the marginal private benefit. In the case of negative externality, the marginal social cost will be higher than the private cost. So we'll externalities are external costs or costs incurred by third parties other than the buyers and sellers, not reflected in prices. So we have taken the case of a factory. Suppose we consider a paper factory, a factory producing paper, and the factory dumps its waste in a river nearby. Now, the river is not owned by any person. There are fishermen who lives near the river catching fish, earning their livelihood by catching fish from the river. Now, water gets contaminated, the stock of fish reduces and it is affecting the livelihood of the people. So there is an external cost, or even people living nearby, the villagers living nearby, they are bearing the cost of pollution caused by the working of the factory. You may recall the case of the Plachimada issue, where the Coca-Cola company, when it operated, it created large social cost to the society living nearby, to the villages living nearby. It depleted problems for the society. So these are external costs, and these costs are never considered by the factory owner in the case of in the process of production. So the example, damage by industrial pollution to a society. So what happens is that there is an external cost. So there is a marginal social cost resulting from the presence of negative externality. So we can say that marginal social cost is marginal private cost. The cost to society because of pollution, and because of this, price will never be the efficient will not be achieved because achieved when negative externality is present. So we will be discussing the concept of negative externality in a market equilibrium situation. We have shown in the x-axis considering the functioning of a paper factory producing tons of paper, and this is tons of paper is shown in the y-axis. Price, benefit, and costs are shown. Suppose you are considering a situation where the factory is producing 5 million tons of paper. Benefit curve is, and this is the supply curve. At the point of equilibrium, the margin equal. That is, for the situation is the point of equilibrium, 5 million tons of paper, and the price of paper is realistic assumption, I know, but for the sake of simplicity, we have taken it like that. For 1 ton of paper, we have taken it as 100 rupees. Okay. Suppose in the production of this paper, pollution is created to the tune of 10 rupees, so that a marginal external cost equal to 10. The cost curve. So the cost curve will shift upwards to show is equal to marginal private cost plus marginal. Now, new point of equilibrium where the marginal social cost curve at point A. So the new equilibrium is at point A. For a market efficient situation, the 4.5 million tons of paper at a price equal to. But this is not an efficient situation when the producer is. It is better to produce 5 million tons of paper at when he out the society's cost. If he takes into account the society's cost, or for the society, equilibrium is better achieved at the point where 4.5 million at a price equal to 105. That is, LSS naturally reduce pollution and will help the society. So there's net gain in society may move from point E to point A. So point E to point A, it results in a net gain or net that will be equal to AB, whose the welfare obtained by the society. So this is a situation of market externalities. Now, let's consider the of a positive externality, the marginal social benefit will be higher than the price. There's an external benefit which is not reflected in prices. So marginal social benefit will be equal to marginal private benefit plus marginal external benefit. Now consider the case of vaccinations taken against a disease. We are living in the period of an epidemic, and you should know the importance of taking vaccination against a disease. Suppose people take vaccination, you pay for the vaccination, you are taking vaccination, and because you are taking vaccination, you are prevented from the contact of disease. But if majority of the people take vaccination, even if you do not personally take vaccination, you will get the benefit of it. That is, if 60% of the society take vaccinations, then naturally the spread of the epidemic will be stopped. So you will also benefit when vaccinations are taken by majority of the society. So there's an external benefit which is not taken into consideration by the people taking vaccination. So if the disease itself is eradicated, the entire population. So that is again a case of positive externality. But here also, even if it benefits the society, here also this is not an efficient solution because marginal social benefit here is higher than the marginal private benefit. If it's not taken into account, then that will lead to inefficient allocation, leading to market failures. So, case of positive externality also, it can lead to market failures. So, achieved in the presence of, so the marginal private benefit curve is shown. The marginal private is shown. The marginal social cost curve is shown, and at the vaccinations are taken. Vaccinations are shown in the x-axis and shown in the y-axis. 10 million vaccinations are taken. Vaccination. Suppose each vaccination creates a 20 rupees per vaccination, so that the total should come to 45. And if this external benefit is added to the marginal private benefit curve, then the marginal social and curve shifts. It will come to an equilibrium at point B. At point become 30 for vaccination, and the number of vaccinations should. Now you know that when price of something increases, actually quantity demanded should decrease. So what should be the price when vaccinations increase to 12? We can see from I should have extended the outline to this point. So if you that at price 10, the vaccinations can increase. So only if the price of vaccination decreases from 10, you achieve an efficient number of vaccination which is equal to 12 million. So equilibrium B at price 30, vaccination cannot be achieved because at a higher price, more vaccinations. Even then, a movement from point E to point B will be equivalent to the triangle ABE. So this is a positive externality is present because price is not equal to marginal cost solution, and for efficiency to be achieved, corrective measures should be carried out. So when positive externality or negative externality is present, market failures. So how you can either use a corrective tax, or you can use externalities, you can use subsidies. So there are different methods to externalities. So in the case of internalizing negative externality, one of the main methods to impose a tax equivalent to the cost created will be added to the price so that the marginal cost benefit will become equal. So this idea was first introduced by Arthur Cecil Pigou. It is also known as Pigouvian tax. So it is introduced by Pigou and it is also known as Pigouvian taxes. So this is a method to internalize externality. Internalize externality is being incorporated into the demand and supply so that it is reflected in prices. So one method of internalizing negative externality is called corrective taxes. So corrective taxes are designed to adjust marginal external. But this does not mean that an imposition of corrective tax will automatically reduce pollution. A corrective tax imposed and it increases the price means that increases the cost of production, means that it may cause a disincentive to reduce pollution to zero. But tax which is generated as a result of this can be used for compensating the people who have suffered damages. This is not a necessary condition. Even if it is not used to compensate the people who suffered damage, this will ensure an efficient allocation of resources. So corrective tax increases net welfare, leading to efficient allocation of resources. We will see how it is done. So previous example, that is tons of paper is being produced in a paper factory, and the marginal benefit curve, marginal private cost curve is shown at point A, 5 billion produced at 100. Suppose there is a pollution equivalent to rupees 10 per ton of paper. Then tax will be made equal to the marginal external cost. So tax will be imposed at rupees 10 per ton of. So this will cause the marginal cost curve to shift from the S to. This will cause a shift from marginal cost curve from S to S dash, where S is the marginal social cost curve. The new point of equilibrium where the marginal social cost curve, at this point, for 0.5 million tons of paper will be equal to 105. So when you look into the demand curve, you can see that this is the 100 is the people were willing to pay at 5 million tons of paper, and cost, you can see that at 4.5 million tons of paper, that 95 should be the price. So if 10 is added amount from 95 to 10 as taxes, 105 will be the required amount price, then 4.5 million tons of paper is produced. Here in B, marginal social cost will be equal to marginal social benefit, and this will end corrective measure to reach an efficient solution. Tax collected will be 4.5 into 4. And the total area of tax generated can be shown as the rectangle KH. This rectangle FBKH shows the total tax. So this can result in an income redistribution if compensate the people who suffer damages. But even if it is not used like that, even then it will result in an efficient allocation of resources. So there is a net welfare society, as we said before. Externality. In the case of a positive externality, what the government can do is the government can provide corrective subsidies. You know that taking vaccinations is good for you and it's good for the society also. What we've said is that when there is an epidemic and if the majority of the people has taken vaccination, the spread of the epidemic itself will be stopped. So that even persons who are not taking the vaccination will get. So people should be motivated to take up vaccinations. For this, what the government can do is the government can provide subsidies to the tune of the marginal external benefit generated by vaccination. So payment made by the government will go to the buyers or sellers so that the price paid by the consumer is now reduced. So subsidy payment will be equal to marginal external benefit. We have said that in the case of taxation also this is true. In the case of taxation, it was equal to marginal external cost. Similarly, subsidy payment will be equal to marginal external benefit. And through this, it will lead to an efficient allocation of resources. We will see this. The previous used here also, there is the marginal private benefit curve. There is the margin that equilibrium at point T. At point E, 10 million vaccinations are taken at a price equal to 25. But each vaccination an external benefit of 20. So when this is added to the price of vaccination, it should come to 45. So we'll shift the marginal benefit curve forward. So D dash is equal to marginal private benefit plus subsidy, which is equal. So new point of equilibrium is the point of intersection of social benefit curve and the marginal social cost curve at point B. 12 million vaccinations will be taken at a price equal to. Before that, this is not possible because when the price increases, naturally the amount of vaccination will reduce. But suppose the government provides a subsidy equal to 20, then the price paid by the consumer will fall. Price paid by the consumer falls to 10, then you can see that 12 million vaccinations point of equilibrium. Now, this is an efficient solution. So, by providing people to take up more vaccination to more inoculations, then government can ensure a more efficient solution. So, at point B as equilibrium, you can see 12 million vaccinations will be price 10. Here, the subsidy generated will be the area or total subsidy generated by the government. And corrective taxes are means to reduce externalities. Internalizing externalities. You are adding externalities into the demand and supply curve so that it is reflected in taxes. Another externalities can be internalized is called cost theorem. So this was first by Ronald Coase in 1960, and the article was called The Problem of. So Coase said that the problem with internalizing the problem exists because this is the case of common property resources. When resources are common to all, you consider a river flowing through then the river is not owned by any person. The river is not under the ownership of the factory. Is not owned by the villagers. So if it is a common property, to manage or sustain the common property. So people will dump its waste, the people will use river water indiscriminately. So all these can cause social cost. Problem is that it is not owned. It is not legally owned. So if property be established, that is, if the river is owned by the factory owner, then if the ownership is given to the factory owner, he can charge any person for fishing in the river. So you are considering a factory which is producing paper and dumping its waste in the river. There are fishermen who earn their livelihood by catching fish. But suppose the factory owner owns the river, then the fisherman for fishing from the river. But there is as you river only if the river water is not contaminated. If the river water is contaminated and the stock of fish is very less, they will. So there is an incentive for the factory owner, even when he owns the river, not to too much. Now, suppose it is the fisherman who owns the river. If the fisherman owns the river, they can fine the factory for dumping its waste in the river. Then again, that there's a disincentive for polluting the river, so, or else you will have to pay a huge fine. They will about other means. They will naturally think about other means which is possible. So governments, by establishing property rights, can externality. But there is one condition to this. That is, the transaction cost of bargaining should be zero. Ronald Coase says that by establishing property rights, can internalize externalities, provided the transaction bargaining should be zero. Owner and the fisherman get together and bargain how much should be paid to dump waste in the river, or how much should be paid to fish. There is a exchange of ideas, or there's a bargaining between the factory owner and the fisherman. But suppose you are considering a river which the banks of many villages. So large number of villages are affected when the water gets contaminated. So if you want to reach an amicable solution between the factory owner and the villagers, then you should have to convene a meeting. You should draw up contracts. You should employ lawyers. All this will generate cost. So that is the whole lot of villages rise in protest against the fact. Then this thing could be settled only by calling in all the people involved. So the transaction cost of bargaining in that case would be very high. So rights establishment will work only when the transaction cost of. So free exchange of established rights for cash payment lead to an efficient allocation. So if you can establish property rights correctly, there is a free exchange of rights, it can lead to an efficient allocation. This is irrespective of who is granted. It does not matter whether the factory is given property right or whether the fishermen are given property right. It does not make much of a difference. Who owns the property? Whoever owns the property can reach a solution by talking with the other concerned parties. Or you can take the example of two fields. One owned by a cattle rancher, the other owned by a wheat farmer. Suppose there is no fence in between the fields. So if the number of cattle with the cattle increases, naturally cows will stray into the wheat field and damage wheat crops. So increasing the number of cattle with the cattle farmer is a damage to the wheat farmer. So there is an external cost generated equal to price of wheat multiplied by the quantity of damaged wheat, and this will naturally increase when the price of wheat increases. Suppose the wheat is given the property right, that is, wheat owner is given the ownership of property. Then if the cows get into his field and damage his property, the cattle rancher for damages. Then there is exchange of cash payment, which will lead to an efficient allocation. So, which I have discussed were reasons which contribute towards market failures. The next concept is called public goods. So public goods are goods with benefits that pay for that are shared by a large number of consumers. So in the case of public goods, the problem is that markets do not function very effectively in the provision of public goods. For markets to function effectively, the consumers always try, producers try to maximize profit. Demand and supply, market mechanism function effectively so that price is determined in the market. And for this, there should be an incentive for the producers to provide goods to the market. The producers will be willing to provide goods to the market only when there is profit for them. They are in the business for making profit. If they cannot get a maximum profit, they will not certainly produce a commodity. But in the case of public goods, the problem is that even if you do not pay for the public good, you cannot be excluded from consuming the commodity. Take the case of street lights. Street lights, the street light is near your house. You get the benefit of street light, but all those who walk through the road near the street light will get the benefit of it. It does not in any way reduce your consumption, and you cannot prevent anyone from using street light. Or in the case of roads, in the case of bridges. So all these are goods with benefits that cannot be withheld from those who do not pay for it. The chief characteristics of public good are that they are rival in consumption and they are non-excludable. So what do you understand? Non-consumption. In the case of private goods are always rival in consumption. When a large stock of fish comes to the market and somebody in the morning and buys up all the fish in the market, then when you arrive in the morning to buy fish, you won't get it because already the consumer has one consumer has purchased all the fish that's available. So consumption is rival. Or consider that your teacher brings a cake to the classroom. You all get a share of the cake. You all get slices of cake. If there are large number of people in your class, get a smaller share. If there are small number of people in your class, consumption is rival in the case of a private good. But in the case of a public good, non-rival. There's one more person using the commodity. That's not in any way. Take the case of a cable TV transmission. Other people watching the cable TV transmission does not in any way reduce your consumption. So consumption is non-rival in the case of a cable TV transmission. Or the road, walking through public roads, your consumption or your enjoyment is not reduced by other people's consumption. So consumption is non-rival in the case of public goods. The other property is that it's non-excludable. It's difficult to exclude people from consuming it. In the case of cable TV, actually you can exclude people from consuming it because it is chargeable. If you do not price, even if it is non-rival, you can exclude people from consuming it. But in the case of a public road, even in public road, it is possible because it's newly there will be a toll, and when a price is charged, you can exclude people from it. But take the case of a street light, take the case of a lighthouse. In all these cases, take the case of a clean air. There's a clean air project in it. Even if you don't pay tax, even if you do not have towards it, even then you cannot be excluded. Any person who lives in gets the benefit of a clean air project or clean water project. In all these cases, it is non-excludable. And because it is non-excludable and non-rival, because of this, it is inefficient to provide it through market mechanism. And that is why in the case of many public goods, or in the case of majority of public goods, these will be provided through the public sector. For a pure public good, of enjoying the public good is zero. One more person enjoying the good, the cost of production. And markets do not function in the provision of public goods. And this is because of the special properties of public goods. Because of its non-rivalness and non-excludability, markets do not function effectively in the provision of public goods. You can classify goods on the basis of that. There are pure private goods. In the case of pure private goods, consumption is possible. You can prevent people from using a good if you do not pay for it. So exclusion is possible and consumption is rival. Then there are price excluded public goods. Actually, the consumption is non-rival here, but people can be excluded from consuming it. People can be excluded from consuming. That is the case of a cable TV transmission. Here consumption is non-rival because however many people program, it doesn't reduce your benefit. It doesn't reduce your consumption. So consumption, but people can be excluded from the consumption of this because you are not paying the price for it. So those price excludable public goods. They are not pure public goods. They are a mixture of public goods. Then there are congestible public goods. Congestible public goods are also called club. Becomes rival after a point. That is, take the case of a rush hour traffic. In the case of a rush hour traffic in the between the times, say 8 to 9 or 9, when all people are going for their jobs, when students are going for college, schools, that period, one more person entering the traffic is certainly going to a rivalry in consumption, because everyone wants to reach their office or college in time. When consumption becomes rival after a point, then those kind of public good. Or take the case of a swimming pool or a beach. In the case of a swimming pool, if there are one or two people enjoy the swimming pool to your benefit, but suppose the number is in a swimming pool, so that you cannot even move. Not even move in a swimming pool, the enjoyment is reduced. So the consumption becomes well after an optimum point is reached. So in certain kind of goods, so when you cross this optimum number, consumption becomes rival. Those kind of goods, congestible public goods or club goods. Then there are pure public goods. In the case of public goods, consumption is both non-rival and non-excludable. There are also another you should consider. Those are called merit goods. Merit goods can equally be provided through the market, but the government considers these goods meritorious and needed for the welfare of the society. Because of this, the government provides these to the public sector also. You can take the example of education and health. Education can very well be provided through the private sector, but the government also offers education so that education can be given at a lesser cost, lesser price. Or in the case of health facilities, good health system can be provided through the market, through private hospitals, but the government, for the benefit of the society, also provides health fees through public sector. So when goods are so meritorious that the government provides it through the public sector, then those goods are called merit goods. Then between the demand for a public good and the demand for a private good. In the case of a private good, we can see that the market equilibrium will be achieved in a Pareto optimum situation, where price is equal to marginal cost, and the mechanism of supply will ensure an equilibrium point at which the quantity of good and the price of the good will be determined. But you know that in the case of a private good, the price is determined in the market by the forces of demand and supply. Each will consume different quantities of the good at the given price. So consumer A will consume a quantity, consumer B will consume a different quantity, and by adding up the quantities of goods consumed by the different individuals in the market, you can reach the market demand. So each person will, that amount of good per his marginal benefit is equal to marginal cost. So for each person, the marginal benefit and marginal cost will be equal, and the people will consume different quantities of the good there, depending upon the income, depending upon the price of good in the market. But the price is common. You are consuming different quantities depending upon your circumstances. So in the case of a public good, this is not how it happens. A public good is provided provided by public sector or by the government, or by public good which is provided in the market. It will be in the same quantity of good will be provided to all individuals. When a road is constructed, the same road is used by all individuals. So the same quantity is used, but suppose you are saying that suppose individuals voluntarily contribute towards the construction of this public good. Consider a colony in which a road is to be constructed. Each individual is asked how much they would be willing to pay to have this road. You assume that people are willing, or people voluntarily reveal their preferences. These are actually called pseudo demand curves because actual demand curves cannot be derived in the case of a public good. You are assuming that people willingly reveal their preference and people willingly pay for the construction of road. Suppose the government does nothing to construct the road. The colony people decides to construct the road for themselves and they ask for each people's contribution. So each person can pay a different amount. Yeah, the price is different. Each person pays a different amount, but consumes the same quantity. Here, the individual marginal benefit and marginal cost cannot be equated. The sum of marginal benefit will be equated to the sum of marginal cost. The sum of marginal benefit will be equal to the marginal social cost. So the consumers pay different amounts based on their marginal benefit. So marginal social benefit will be equal to sum of marginal benefits is equal to marginal social cost curve. So in the case of a public good, the same amount will be consumed, but people pay on their preferences. And you are assuming that people voluntarily reveal their preferences and pseudo demand curves can be shown, can be drawn based on this. In a colony, you are considering only 3 people, individual A, individual B, and individual C. Suppose the cost of employing a is 450 per week. The security guard can be treated because you cannot exclude anyone from consuming the benefit of there being a security guard. Suppose these individuals are willing to reveal their preferences. Suppose individual A's marginal benefit says that when one individual, one security B is willing to pay 250 rupees, C is willing to pay 200 rupees. So the total comes to 750 rupees, which is higher than 450. So the sum of marginal benefits is not equal to marginal cost. Marginal benefits are higher. So you can employ more security guards depending upon the preferences revealed. So when two security guards are employed, pays 250, B pays 200, C pays 150, and the total comes to 600, which is again higher than 450. Consider 3 security guards. Now, when 3 security guards are employed, A pays 200, B pays 150, C pays 100, it comes to 450. Now, this is equal to cost of employing a security guard. So, downward sloping curve shows the sum of the marginal benefits. The horizontal line shows the marginal social cost. You see that 3 security guards can be employed at a price equal to 450. A, B's demand curve and C's demand curve, or the marginal benefits curves of A, B, and the amount each person gives at the price 3 can be using the diagram. Now, this equilibrium, which is based on voluntary contributions of individuals, is called a Lindahl equilibrium. This is by the economist Eric Lindahl, and Eric Lindahl derived an equilibrium for the provision of public goods based on voluntary contributions of individuals. So these demand curves are not real demand curves. These are pseudo demand curves based on the revelation of preferences. So output of a pure public good can be shown using the voluntary preferences of individuals, where the sum of the marginal benefit will be equal to marginal cost curve. And the prices so determined are also called Lindahl prices. Then these are that I've discussed so far. The first one is called a free rider problem. What is it? We have said that even if you don't pay for it, you cannot be excluded from it. Suppose we have discussed the case of a colony constructing a road for their benefit. Suppose one person says that I don't enjoy the benefit of the road. I'm not interested in it. The government will provide the road in due time. I'm not willing to pay for it. So even if you are not willing to pay for it, how can you be excluded? You cannot be excluded from using the road, or else excluded only at a very high cost. So so it's not worth doing it. So the free rider enjoys the benefit of a public good without paying for it. So in the case of a non-excludable public good, people can free ride. Let others pay for it. Why should I pay for it? That is the question. Now, this problem is acute in a considering a colony in which a road is constructed, then if you do not pay for it, if you differ from pay, then people of the colony may ostracize you. People may behave badly. You may feel bad. So it's not very easy to survive in a society like that. But suppose you consider a very large community, don't know even each other, then this problem is very acute. So many people will, because why should I pay? Even if other people pay for it, the good will be provided. But if everyone does this, the good will not be produced. So this is called a free rider problem. Everyone prefers to free ride rather than contribute towards it. So resources for which anyone has free access are called common property. So at minerals, any other shared resource comes under common property. So in the case of common property, the problem is that unlimited people has access to it. So it will lead to inefficient market. Limited number of fishermen has access to a river. Too many fish will be caught. It will lead to an inefficient situation. So this is the problem with common property resources. Another idea which is connected to this is overuse of will lead to depletion and degradation of resources. For this land, that is, the pasture land is common to all, and people can send cattle into the pasture land for grazing. So it is beneficial cattle owner to send more cattle to the pasture land, because the cost is shared by the society. But when he sells his cattle in the market, of it. So for it is advantageous for him to send into the pasture land. But when everyone does this, when everyone more cattle, the pasture will become overgrazed. The pasture will become useless. The resources will get depleted. There will be a degradation of resources, and the pasture land will be useless. So this is a problem, and this problem exists because it's a common property and there is no move to sustain it. Here, tragedy is inevitable. So he uses a dramatic situation that because people act in their self-interest, a tragedy is inevitable, and that's the tragedy of commons. Now, when you discuss common property resources, you should also discuss the Eleanor Prize in 2009 for her work in common property resources. What she says is that when he traces the development of common property resources, she says that a common property always result in resources or it can be well managed if the local community take an interest. So she refutes the theory of Garrett Hardin, saying whenever it is common property, it can be made sustainable. And she also says that the cost theorem need not apply. Even when property rights are not assigned, then this can result in it can result in a well managed. So for this, she puts forward 8 principles. One is that you should see what is the clear boundaries in which the resources are governed. Then the rules for governing the common property should suit the local needs of the community. The community should take up an interest to manage the resources, and rules for governing it should suit the local needs. The local people should have a role in making the rules. Universal rules should not be applied to the local community. Local community should have their own specific rules, and these rules should be accepted by an outside authority. Then there should be constant monitoring to see that the rules are not violated, and the violators should be penalized. So that a sustainability of resources is ensured. Then naturally this will result in disputes. So low-cost dispute resolution should be handled. Dispute resolution should not be made at a huge cost. And the community should build a responsible system to manage and preserve these costs. And through this, even property rights, the necessary steps to build a response. For all to the reasons for market failure. So we have said that markets function effectively in the case of most goods. In most situations, markets function effectively based on demand and supply, based on market mechanism. You can find out the price of the commodities in the market. But there are situations when markets fail to function effectively. Suppose you are considering a situation of market power. In the case of monopoly power, the monopolist will always produce an output at the point where his marginal cost and marginal revenue is equal. He will not produce an output at the point price is equal to marginal cost. Because of this, he is producing lesser amount of output at a higher price. From the society's point of view, it's better to produce more output at a lesser price. So this may lead to market failure. The other possible situation is that if you have incomplete information or if the information is asymmetric, that is, if one party has more information than the other party in a transaction, in all these cases, that can lead to market failures. The other two concepts are what we have discussed so far, that is the case of externalities. When externalities are present, price will not be equal to marginal cost. The marginal cost will be higher. In the case of there will be marginal external cost when negative externalities are present. There will be marginal external benefit when positive externalities are present. So this naturally will lead to market failures. In the case of public goods, again, public goods provision will result in market failures. So all these ideas which we have discussed leads to situations of market failure. Thank you.
Thank you. First one is actually, what is the preferred reference text for this topic? Vinayak has asked.
Okay. You can refer to Dominic Salvatore's microeconomics textbook, or you can refer to Pindick and Rubelfield's microeconomics textbook. So all the microeconomics textbooks deals with this topic. But you can also refer to books in public finance. David Hyman's book in public finance. There is more a detailed description of these topics in public finance books also. So microeconomics, either Pindick and Rubelfield or Dominic Salvatore can better be used.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And the next one is, you have mentioned vaccination in the positive externality. He asked whether it is a public good. Is vaccination a public good?
Vaccination, because it is excludable. But when it crosses beyond a limit, that is, when vaccination crosses the number of optimal users, then vaccination can turn into a public good, because you cannot exclude people from getting the benefit of it. When the external benefit reaches the entire society, actually, you will also get the benefit of it. Otherwise, only people who pay the price for it will get the benefit of vaccination. So after a point is crossed, after the entire society benefits from it, then it can be treated as a public good. Normally, you cannot treat vaccination as a public good. Prevent people from using it if you do not pay for vaccination.
Okay, ma'am. The next one is how positive externality leads to market failure. The point you explained was not clear. Can you explain that once again?
Okay. And positive, we will take the case of vaccination itself. In the case of vaccination, the idea is that when you take vaccination, you pay the price for it, you get vaccinated, then you will not contract the disease. But when this increases, when the number of people taking vaccination increases, what happens is that suppose 60% of the population vaccinates. When 60% of the population vaccinates, the benefit of vaccination will reach even people who do not take vaccination, because the spread of epidemic will be stopped because of this. That is, you have taken vaccination, because of this, the other people will also benefit because they will not contract disease from you. And also, if majority of people take vaccination, the rest 40% who have not taken vaccination will get the benefit of it because the spread of the disease has stopped. So that is a positive externality. Or you can simply say that suppose some person is learning music nearby you. You are listening to good music. That's a positive externality. Somebody has painted his house. He has provided a good garden. When you walk through the road, you can look at the garden and enjoy the beauty of it. Again, that is positive externality. So those are external benefit which is not included, which is not intended by the provider. The person who takes vaccination does not intend that benefit from it. He takes vaccination for his benefit, but you also benefit. This causes a stop to the spread of the disease. Hope that is clear. If it is not clear, we will go back to the diagram and discuss it again.
I hope it is clear, ma'am. And then one more question. Kindly elaborate the pseudo demand curve. That was not clear actually. I think so. Pseudo demand curve.
That is, in the case of public goods, actually in the case of private goods, we have demand curves. As well, demand curve, when you purchase a commodity in the market, your demand is given. Using demand and supply curves, you can find out the prices. In the case of a public good, you cannot purchase a good in the market. In the case of public good, the public good is provided through the government. In the case of street lights, how can you know what is the demand of the person? You can simply ask people that is, how much would you be willing to pay to have a street light in front of your house? The street light, you know that the street light benefits not only you, it benefits other people who walk through the road. Even if you do not, you benefit of it. Suppose you say that I don't need a street light, I have plenty of lights in my house, I don't need a street light. So I am not willing to pay for it. So if people are asked for their preferences, they may not willingly reveal their preferences. And you do not have a method for knowing what is their demand. So what you can do is you can simply ask for people's preferences, and based on this, you can draw demand curves, but they are not actual demand curves. They are only artificial or constructed demand curves. And that is why it is called pseudo demand curves.
Okay, ma'am. And one more last question. Then he asked, how can we say that a cable TV is a public good?
Cable TV does not have all the properties of a public good. Cable TV does not have all the properties of public good. It's a mixture of public good, but it has one property which can be used in the case of public good. For a public good, consumption should be non-rival. That is the most important property for public good. Consumption should be non-rival. So in the case of a cable TV transmission, actually consumption is non-rival. Even if more people join in for the cable TV program, even if more people watch the program, it does not in any way reduce your consumption. And that means consumption is rival. But it's not a pure public good because you can exclude people from consuming it. It has one of the characteristics of a public good. So very often it is used in an example of public good to simplify things, but it is not a pure public good because people can be excluded if you do not pay for it.
Okay, ma'am. I think most of the questions are answered. I think now we can conclude our session.